Right, hello everyone. Good evening, good day.
How's everyone doing?
Hope you guys are all fine. How are you going, Anthony?
I'm doing wonderful.
You
How
good?
are you?
Good, good.
Great.
Could be better.
Yeah.
Always. But
Always.
we're going to carry on with our lessons. Today we've got lesson number 4, and what is it called? The Language of Kabbalah. So up to now we discovered what the Wisdom of Kabbalah is, plus we've discovered that there is a purpose to life, which I'm sure you guys are all glad to have discovered. And we discussed the purpose of life as the Creator wanting to bring us to a state of perfection from this opposite state that we exist in this world. We also touched on the concept of the perception of reality in an earlier lesson, our second lesson. So the Wisdom of Kabbalah, the perception of lesson, the purpose of creation, all these lessons one by one, kind of opening up the wisdom for us. And today we're going to talk about the language of Kabbalah, because this science dates back to 5,778 years, as at the 23rd of September this year. So as you'll be amazed to know, it's quite an old wisdom, and it dates back thousands of years. And from its initial birth, which we're going to touch on later on when we talk about the history of the Wisdom of Kabbalah. In fact, the whole of the history of creation, we're going to discuss that. The way they wrote, the way they invented the letters, the way they put everything together is really a wonder, because everything, the way it's put together, the way it's discussed, talked about, relates only to what they could describe as what's called the spiritual world. And the spiritual world obviously is not a fantasy island out there somewhere, but it is the sensations, the emotions, and the thoughts and the intentions that a person goes through when he has equivalence of form with this one governing force of nature, which is actually nature, or but you might like to call him the Creator, as we do in Kabbalah, or God, Allah, Elohim, whatever takes your fancy. At the end of the day, we need to remember that the Wisdom of Kabbalah talks about one force that governs the whole of reality, and the laws of that force are called the laws of nature. So all the laws in nature are actually the laws of the Creator. And the laws of nature and our human nature are not very compatible, unfortunately. And because of the lack of compatibility, we have problems in life. So they're going to discuss, well, we're going to look at the language of Kabbalah today, so we can see a way of opening up how we need to read the text, how we need to approach the writings, so we can actually get the most benefit of understanding what they're about, and then according to that understanding we can direct ourselves better towards that purpose of creation which we discussed in our previous lesson. So let's get smashing, and if there are any dramas or you have any questions, do let us know, and we'll answer them as best we can. We're going to go through and read some from this book, as usual, Kabbalah for the Student. If you have it, great. If not, it's on the website somewhere. I actually don't know where it is on the website exactly, simply because I've always had the book. So you're going to have to do a bit of soul searching in there to find out where they are. On the other hand, oops, let me just rearrange my table a little bit. Now, we're going to read, let's just rearrange ourselves here. There we go. Okay, we're going to read and then we're going to talk about it. And what should we read? We're going to read something from page 775 from the Kabbalah glossary. Now in this book is really, really cool, because at the end of it, there's a Kabbalistic Dictionary. So for a lot of spiritual concepts, words are defined in such a way that we can actually relate to them. So we don't go into some kind of a fantasy definition in our mind, because, for example, let's actually take an example and see what they're talking about. Page 775. See, there's a Appendix A Kabbalah glossary. For example, For example, the word 6,000 years. Okay, so when the books talk about the 6,000 years, this is what they mean. Okay, so hey, stand ready for this. 6,000 years means the world of Asiya is called 2,000 years of Tohu, since Tohu is Klipot, and the whole of the world of Asiya is in Klipot. Klipot means the evil inclination, our bad side, in other words. The world of Yetzirah is called 2,000 years of Torah, since Yetzirah is considered Zerampin, which is the written Torah, which is the law. The world of Beriah is called 2,000 years of the days of the Messiah, since Beriah is considered Bina, or Ima, which is Leah, the mother of the Messiah, son of David, from whom the whole redemption comes. So as you can see, when we talk about 6,000 years, that's what they're talking about. So it's very interesting, and we really need to get the definitions right so that when we say 6,000 years, our mind doesn't go into counting the years, but it's always talking about a specific period of development for the soul. Rightio then. So what are we supposed to read? Go over various terms and interpretations. Okay, so we just did one, so let's take a few more. Let's take a few more interesting ones. For example, abdomen. Okay, here's a nice word. When we talk about abdomen, we immediately think we're talking about the human body. However, if a Kabbalistic book talks about the abdomen, this is what it means. The bottom third of Tiferet in each Patsuf. In Nukva, it is the place of conception and delivery. And when we use the word above, it means the lower one's equivalence of form with its upper one. Well, that's nice to know. And abroad, okay, when the books talk about they went abroad or they went to foreign lands, this is what they mean. Abroad means Asiya of this world, Beriah is the place of the temple, and Yetzirah is Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel is the land of Israel. So as you can see, all of these terms that the Kabbalists wrote, although they seem, some of them seem like they're from our world and our day-to-day language even, none of them actually refers to anything of this world. For example, the word internality. Internality means the aviut in the Masach is called by that name because this is the place for giving of abundance. For example, the word Jerusalem. Now, if you read in the book, in a Kabbalistic book, something about Jerusalem, you might think, oh, he's talking about a city called Jerusalem. No, Jerusalem means the external yesod of Malchut. So as you can see, there are many words which, if we read them, we might relate them to corporeality. But in Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic authentic sources, they don't talk about this world. They don't need to tell us anything about this world because it's right in front of our eyes and we can see it, just like a lit up Halloween pumpkin. So they don't need to tell us anything about this world. All they need to do, holy books, real authentic holy books, write about one thing: how the individual builds a relationship with the Creator. And they only talk about the phases of that relationship. The dilemma that Kabbalists had for thousands of years was how to describe to people of this world something that our five senses can't grasp so that they won't get confused. Obviously, they had a lot of dramas with that, and because we got confused, now we have a lot of religions who relate everything to corporeality instead of relating everything to building that relationship with the Creator while living in this world. Okay? Not after death, but while we are here. After death, nothing is really going to happen. And nothing can happen. Okay? If we, for example, kill a chicken and eat it, do you expect anything to happen from that chicken? No. Protein, yes. It's funny how a piece of meat goes into another piece of meat and keeps it alive, right? But nothing will happen from that dead chicken, and just like nothing will happen from our dead bodies either. So this relationship we need to build is very important. So accordingly, when we study the wisdom of Kabbalah, we must interpret these words correctly so we can make sure that our direction stays on the line. It's a very, very thin line. So we need to bring all the tools together, called the environment, in order to make sure that we don't sway off and start getting funny ideas or understand things in a completely irrelevant or misguided way. So this glossary is very important. Let's read a little bit more. What are the words in Kabbalah talking about? Page 23. Kabbalah for the student. Let's see. Kabbalah for the student, page 23. The essence of the wisdom of Kabbalah, that's the name of the article. And there's a place there called abstract names. Many believe that all the words and the names in the wisdom of Kabbalah are a kind of abstract names. This is so because it deals with godliness and spirituality, which are above time and space, where even our imagination has no hold. For this reason, they have decided that surely these matters speak only of abstract names, or even more sublime and exalted than abstract names, as they are completely and from the outset devoid of elements that are imagined. So people who looked into Kabbalistic books thought these guys are just talking about something just not real. They think it's surreal because they can't relate to the words in terms of spirituality. So a person who doesn't have that proper direction can't relate to the text correctly. And when they can't relate to the text correctly, there are two things that can happen. One is, as it writes here, he just thinks these are irrelevant writings. Or second thing, he'll get the wrong message. He'll misunderstand everything. Let's see what else there is. But that is not the case. On the contrary, Kabbalah uses only names and appellations that are concrete and real. It is an unbending rule for all Kabbalists that anything we do not attain, we do not define by a name and a word. Here you must know that the word attainment implies the ultimate degree of understanding. It derives from the phrase, that thy hand shall reach. That means that before something becomes utterly lucid, as though gripped in one's hand, Kabbalists do not consider it attained, but understood, comprehended, and so on. Therefore, a Kabbalist, if he's an authentic Kabbalist, writes everything according to attainment, and if there's something he has not attained, he doesn't talk about it. If he hasn't attained its utmost attainable level, you can always make an error. He'll always make a mistake. So they have an unbending rule. If you're a Kabbalist, you're studying Kabbalah and you advanced in certain degrees of spirituality and you're writing your texts for others to study, if there's something you haven't attained, you don't touch it, you don't talk about it. And that's the situation. This is an unbending rule. Question is, are you sure he's an attained Kabbalist? Okay, the books you're reading and studying. Well, that we'll discuss later. What else? Let's read also page 24, the law of root and branch. Okay, now this we need to touch on.
One of my favorite parts.
Yeah, this is what we need to understand quite clearly. As you know, before we talked about how our reality was divided in two, and how this world is a world of consequences, and the spiritual world are the causes. So there is causes and consequences, and everything that happens in our world is only a reflection of the causes that are in spirituality. This is why we don't understand why things happen to us. All of a sudden something happens, we don't understand why. Because we're not up here. Whatever is a cause here is only a result here. So we're only living results of phenomena that are caused in another realm which we have no grasp on. So we constantly ask ourselves the mother of all questions, why me? Okay, as life harasses us in this world, we don't understand why things happen. And all of a sudden we have issues, problems, illnesses, whatever, wars, accidents, hurricanes, every thought, every sentence that comes out of your mind or your mouth even. Just think about it. The amount of times you talk with people during the day, and it's like you're talking automatically. Everything that comes out of your mind is like reflexive, it just flows out. Why? Because it was already decided what you were going to say. And the reason we talked, before, I think it was with you guys, we discussed why we can't understand the human level, simply because at our level we can't understand what we are. In order to understand our psychology, because psychology is the psychology of a human being, is his mental state, and because we're at that level of human, we can't understand our own psychology. So our psychology is not a science because it changes according to everyone. In order to understand human psychology, we need to actually be up here in spirituality, so we understand the cause, and then we can understand the outcome here. That's why psychology isn't really considered anything grand in Kabbalah, simply because it won't work until a person attains the reason for his psychological state, which comes from the root of his existence. So we can even call this the roots of our existence. Until a person is up here understanding what's going on, he is going to have no idea about what's going on here. He's just going to be born, going to live, good, bad, who knows, and then whenever, just passes away. And it's all unknown. Anything can happen the next second, just like that. So let's see what he's talking about on page 24 from the law of root and branch. So those are the roots, and here are the branches. Right then. The law of root and branch by which the worlds are related. Page 25, again from the essence of the wisdom of Kabbalah. Kabbalists have found that the form of the four worlds named Atzilut, Bria, Yitzhak, and Asiya, beginning with the first highest world called Atzilut and ending in this corporeal tangible world called Asiya, is exactly the same in every item and event. Now, did we touch on the four worlds before? I'm thinking probably yes. In fact, there are 5 worlds, but that's Adam Kadmon. So this is Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. And the ending point of the world of Asiya, right here at the end, is called our world. That's Adam Kadmon, Atzilut, Bria, Yitzhak, Asiya. And this red place here, our existence, is our world. Whoops. This means that everything that eventuates and occurs in the first world is found unchanged in the next world below it too. It is likewise in all the worlds that follow it, down to this tangible world. So everything he's saying in one world, here let's say, also exists in every other world. Everything exists in every world. There's no difference between them, but only the different degree perceived in the substance of the elements of reality in each world. The substance of the elements of reality in the first uppermost world is purer than in all the ones below it, and the substance of the elements of reality in the second world is coarser than in that of the first world, but purer than all that is lower degree. So from pure to coarse. I'm sure it's not spelt like that, but like that. There we go, coarse. So the more purer the upper worlds are, the coarser the lower worlds are. What does that really mean, coarser? It means we haven't really understood the real depth of the situation. It's like a child in our world looking at his parents or her parents and thinking, oh, that's mum and dad, and relating us as a body. However, as the child grows up, what happens is they begin to relate to mum and dad as a personality. Oh, mum behaves like this. So according to her behavior, the child can then determine, oh, mummy is good or mummy is bad. Okay? So our perception becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. So that's called from purer to coarser. So the higher level the world is, we have a better and a deeper and a more acute understanding of the actions and the thought behind those actions in the world, in the whole of reality. That's basically what that is. So nothing to worry about there. And what else? They compared it to the conduct of a seal and its imprint. All the shapes in the seal are perfectly transferred in every detail and intricacy to the imprinted object. So it is with the worlds, where each lower world is an imprint of the world above it. Hence, all the forms in the higher world are meticulously copied in both quantity and quality to the lower world. Thus, there is not an element of reality or an occurrence of reality in a lower world that you will not find its likeness in the world above it, as identical as two drops in a pond. And they're called root and branch. That means that the item in the lower world is deemed a branch of its pattern found in the higher world, being the root of the lower element, as this is where that item in the lower world was imprinted and made to be. What is that all in a nutshell? In other words, everything that happens in our world has a corresponding root, right? A cause. So the Kabbalists said, oh, wait a minute, because the whole of reality is separated into details, and the most extensive detail, the highest depth of understanding in Atzilut has a material correspondence here in this world. They said, well, why don't we use the things we see here as the words that relate to what's up there? Does that make sense? So, for example, they used the word Jerusalem to describe the outer Malkut of the Sephirah Yesod. But who's going to know that? Well, one can only know if one has a teacher who explains. For example, the land of Israel. Okay, let's see what that is. Let's go back to 775 and let's pick up something really corporeal. Okay, and let's pick up something corporeal that describes the spiritual worlds. Right then. For example, externality. The purest in the kli, which is the vessel, okay, the kli for the or makif. So externality means that when our vessel is at a pure state, that it can attract this light called the surrounding light. So who would have imagined that unless you had someone teaching it as so? Otherwise, from the books, we'd never know that this was anything to do with a thing called the surrounding light. By the way, the lights we're going to discuss in the next lesson. So be aware. Oh, here's something interesting. Death. So death in spirituality, in Kabbalistic books, death means where there is departure of light of Atzilut from the Kli, it is considered death. Or Chokhmah is called light of life, light of Haya, since there is no life to the Kli except in Or Chokhmah. So death means that if we don't have the light of Atzilut in our vessel, if we don't feel that light in us, it means that we're dead. So in spirituality, since we don't feel that, we're dead. In spiritual terms, we're dead. Okay? But in corporeal terms, we're alive. Death as the place of death. The place below the siyum of the upper light, where the point of Simsum below the Parsa, the kelim that fell below the Parsa are called dead, since they are separated from the light of life. So when the vessel, the perception of a person is separated from the perception of the Creator, that person is called dead. Now, if we were to read that, we'd probably think that our body died and something else happened. So as you can see, these are very, very interesting things. When they're talking about life and death, when they're talking about anything in this world, they're only talking about it with terms, well, in order to direct us to the relationship between the soul and the Creator. And we must always remember that. This is very important, so we don't get confused with words of this world which are used to describe a spiritual state. For example, desert. The place of klipot in this world. Klipot means our evil inclination. So whenever I'm in my evil inclination, it means I'm in the desert. Now, who would have thought that Moses was going through the desert for 40 years, and that meant that he was dwelling in his evil inclination? It's a state where he's trying to get out of his evil inclination. That's why it's called the desert. Why? Because in the desert there's no food, there's no water, there's really nothing there. Life is like the taste of sand. So they're using all these words as a reflection so that we can understand the upper worlds. Right then. Any questions there, Anthony?
We have a ton. Let's see here. So I'll just start from the top. Mirjana from Zimbabwe asks, is the 10 Sephirot the map of the higher consciousness?
The 10 Sephirot.
Descending from above
Yeah.
to below and ascending from below to above.
Yeah, the 10 Sephirot is, let's say these, let's write it down, right? That's a nice question. Not really related to this lesson, but you know what? I will relate it to this lesson.
This was like a pre-slide. It actually came in before the lesson.
Before this, okay. So I'll actually slide it and insert it into this lesson. These are the 5 worlds. Okay, and the whole of reality is actually made of 10 Sephirot. So all of the 5 worlds also have corresponding Sephirots. This is Keter. Maybe I'll write the whole thing. For those who don't know, this is Keter. The world of Atzilut is Chokhmah. The world of Biriya is Bina. The world of Yetzirah is Zeirampin, which has 6 Sephirot in it, and the world of Asya is called Malchut. Okay, and Zeirampin has 6 Sephirot inside of it. Let's draw it here. Keter Chokhmah Bina, Hesed, Gevura, Netzach, Keter Rochon Bina Hesed Gevura, Tiferet, sorry, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Alright, so there's 10 for you. So in reality, everything is made up of 10 parts. And in every 10 part, there are also 10 parts and 10 parts and 10 parts and 10 parts. So the whole of reality is like a hologram. What was that picture called? Holographic view. You know, you have small pieces, small pictures of the overall, and every small piece shows the whole picture inside it. And the whole of reality is like that as well. It's like a mishmash. So everything is attained in the 10 Sephirot. Yes, it's that higher level of consciousness. At each degree, we're going to have to renew them, obviously. Why? Because we will need to get deeper into reality as we go along.
Now, Emmanuel from Nigeria has asked, he has a series of questions. He says, so the Creator created creation.
Yes.
He has no attribute of the will to receive, but only to bestow. In other words, he has nothing to gain from creation. So what necessities prompted the Creator to create creation?
Why doesn't he have anything to benefit?
Good question.
What's the question again?
It says,
from who?
It's from Emmanuel from Nigeria.
Okay.
And Emmanuel says, so what necessities prompted the Creator to create creation?
Well, I'll tell you what. The Creator's nature is love and bestow. And so, Emmanuel, have you loved anyone? If you loved somebody, even in corporeal reality, egoistically, what do? You buy them presents. You do good things to them. If you love somebody, your way of showing you love them is by helping them, by caring for them, by buying them gifts, by treating them nicely, by thinking of them before yourself. Isn't that right? So the Creator, being love, and the attribute of love is bestowal, which is giving selflessly, is from this nature, wanting to bestow. So here's actually a desire to bestow. Desire to bestow. But the Creator is very, very sad because he doesn't have anyone to bestow to. It's like you have a really rich kid in school and he has no friends. Like, he's smart, he's wise, he's a really nice person, he's a great kid, he's got everything, but he's got no friends. How miserable is he? Very miserable. So the Creator is a bit sad. He's saying, wow, I've got everything, but I have no friends. Wouldn't it be great if I had some friends? So the Creator decided, how can I have a friend in such a way that I have everything and I want to give everything, but it must be such a relationship that my friend will never feel like he's less than me. He'll never feel like he owes me anything. He won't feel shame because I gave him something. And he'll never feel bad. In fact, he will feel as perfect as me, as great as me, and he'll be at such a high level that he'll be able to keep his head high, look me straight in the eye with no shame or feeling any less than I am. So the Creator has a bit of a dilemma, hasn't he? So what did he do? Well, if he wants to bestow, He needs to create a desire to receive. Because if somebody doesn't want something, how can you bestow to them? You can't. So the Creator created the will to receive. Also known as the vessel, or kli in Kabbalah we call it. Well, get used to this word kli because we use it a lot. It means a vessel. And this vessel is a desire to receive for itself. This is why in life we always want to be happy. We're constantly chasing pleasures. Why? Because that's our nature. If we didn't have such a nature, the Creator wouldn't have anything to give us. But we have a problem. How are we going to receive in such a way that we won't feel bad or less than the Creator? So the Creator has to set up such a world called this world, where we have to discover all the bad things in order to build the good things from scratch. And because we build it ourselves, we build our own perfection, we have nothing to feel less about. In fact, we feel as high as the Creator. And from our low level here, which is our egoistic nature, our egoistic self-love state, egoistic self-loving state of ours, from this oppositeness to the Creator, what we need to do is build ourselves from this dot in the heart we have. Remember, you guys have a dot in the heart. Anyone who's seeking the purpose of creation has a dot in the heart. Everybody has a dot in the heart, but one who's really wanting to discover the purpose of life, how this world works, why we're created, what we're doing here. Just like your question here now. I mean, why would the Creator create us? Our life is a misery. Give us a break. Okay? So these kind of questions come from the dot in the heart. And what the Creator wants us to do is from scratch, He wants us to create all these levels of perfection in order to become just like Him. When we do that ourselves, then we have nothing to be ashamed of because we attained it ourselves. And that way, the Creator has a friend. We have a creature that has attained perfection with his or her own effort and has built his own or her own reality. Isn't that great? We could all use a buddy in life, an extra one.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so we have some questions here from Mike from South Africa. Mike from South Africa is asking, many things happen in our lives that make no sense. How would Kabbalah explain the things that happen that we don't understand?
Well, that's exactly our dilemma, isn't it? Everything happens in our life and we have no idea about what's going on, like the drawing I drew here. Anything can happen any moment, anything, and we have no idea why. So the Kabbalists are saying, well, this is an awful state to be in. It's just horrific. If you think about all the things that can happen in life. I mean, also yesterday we had a really big drama in Las Vegas in the US. Imagine you're going to a concert. You want to have some fun with your friends and family, and all of a sudden, somebody starts shooting. It was a horrific situation. You just don't know what can happen when. It's like our world is turned into just like horrific states, like a bad movie. So Kabbalists are saying this is a really bad state to be living in, because everything is so unpredictable. We're so vulnerable, and we have no idea about what can happen at any one moment, that we need to get out of this state ASAP. So anybody who has an inclination to discover the meaning of life, Kabbalists are saying, well, you better press the gas pedal, because then you can get this dot in the heart, you can develop it, and then make your way up and start making some sense out of this senseless world. And that's the whole idea. This is our whole job, actually. So we really need to, this is the purpose of creation, remember from the last lesson, how we must attain this perfection. There's no getting out of it. And there is a good way we can do it. That's called the Wisdom of Kabbalah. And if we don't, if we're not good kids, what's life going to do? Life's going to pressure us. And just like with everything in life, there is good and bad, and there's also good and bad advancement in spirituality as well. So if a person, puts some effort into it, tries a little, to get things by himself, he can go a long way in a very short amount of time and save him and herself a lot of grief in life. And this is one of the reasons why we come to the Wisdom of Kabbalah, because we all wonder what's going on. We can't be happy. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. All the pleasures we get are just transient. You can't really, you don't have any sense of sustainable pleasure in life. And your nature is a desire to receive pleasure. Can you imagine how crazy that can drive a person? On the one hand, you need to have pleasure because that's your nature. On the other hand, even if you get pleasure, it's just not containable. It just disappears, vanishes, and you have to run after something else. This world just drives people nuts. Anything else there, Anthony?
Oh, yes. So Mike is also asking, is everything that happens... Mike says, is everything that is happening in our world mirrored in the worlds above?
Everything that's happening in our world are caused above.
And he also says, how much control do we have over what happens in our lives?
Or nothing. Nothing. If we had a little bit of control, imagine those people that passed away in Las Vegas. If they had a little bit of control, would they be there? Nobody knows. What control can you have? We didn't decide on the parents that we were born to. We didn't decide on our country. We didn't decide on anything. Even when we're growing up, parents send us to schools they think is fit. They dress us up according to their own style.
We didn't even get to pick our names.
Exactly. You can't pick your name. You can't pick your clothes when you're a kid. It's like, you're restricted from all sides. You're born and all of a sudden you're like in a cage. So already it's what control do we have? And then we're raised inside a culture or a society with the taboos of that culture, and you're stuck in that mind frame for the rest of your life. It's nuts. So, and then you have all these conflicts with other cultures, there's other people, everything. Why? Because you become a product of the environment that you were raised in. And then it is impossible to get yourself rid of that label you've been taken on all your life. It's like you're branded with a product label, and that's it. This is who's asking?
Mike.
So
Mike
that's like Mike. So by the time you grew up in South Africa, by the time you're 20, you grew up in that society, and it's like they've stuck an ingredient label on your forehead, all right? And you said, this is Mike, a product of South Africa. So what choice do we have? Because all our thinking process is then determined according to that software that we've been given all our lives. How we think, how we want things, how we go about doing things, what we feel is right, what we feel is wrong. So according to one culture, something could be right. According to another culture, something could be completely wrong. The same thing can be like way off. So we don't really have control of anything. We will study the lessons called free will. Very important lesson. To get to free will is a whole different ballgame within itself. But we will come to understand what free will is as we study it and as we advance. A person who has a dot in the heart is very privileged, actually, simply because you're able to split yourself in two. When you have a dot in the heart, you are composed of two things. Your dot in the heart and your animal. Your animal being your desire to receive pleasure in this world. And this is very important because only within two discernments can you make a choice. And those two discernments need to be opposite each other, like hot and cold, sweet and bitter, good, bad, tasty, disgusting. All these two opposite things are necessary for us to make a proper decision. Now, if I don't have a dot in the heart, I'm stuck in the form of desire to receive pleasure for myself. And that's my software. I can't get out of it. I'm stuck in it. What free choice can I possibly have? We're as free as a dog. They say it's the dog's life. It's true, but from a negative side. So only a person who has a dot in the heart and can begin now to discern between his dot in the heart and his animalistic, egoistic desire to receive pleasure for himself, personality, then he can start to think about, ooh, where's my freedom of choice? Where can I make a free choice? Yeah.
So that goes into a little bit of Mike's last question. Are much of our lives predetermined?
Well, look, I don't like to sound like a destiny man, but we learned in the previous lesson that when the Creator created everything, He created it in its perfection. If the Creator is perfect, let's go on an assumption, right? So if the Creator is perfect, He would have needed to create a perfect state, and He would have already needed to have created the whole process with it to bring us to that level of consciousness. If you decide to tweak things along the way and make changes, that's already getting rid of the assumption that He's perfect. Why? Because He did something and now He needs to make little adjustments to it. Well, that's already saying, well, sorry, but you messed up. So how can that be perfection? So the process, the end result, and the process is fixed. Nothing we can do about it. The good thing is, what we can do about it is to go through the process with consciousness. That consciousness allows us to attain without suffering, because what's consciousness really? Consciousness means the understanding of what we're doing, the understanding the reason behind what's going on, so we can advance consciously. The most pain that humanity suffers is not on a physical basis, but it's at a psychological dilemma that we have. We suffer most because we don't know why things are happening. If we knew exactly why something happened, even though we hurt ourselves physically, we can still diminish that suffering because we understand why. So understanding is already getting rid of a lot of the suffering. So we need to develop in a conscious way, and that conscious way is the choice that we need to make. Right, but the things that we're going to go through, in our sensations, yes, that's predetermined, but how we go through it is going to depend on us.
Now, from Poland, Rafal is asking, is there any aspect of material life that has an impact for the spiritual world?
No. Is that it?
Also, we have a few more questions from Emmanuel from Nigeria about the wisdom of Kabbalah and prayer. He says, it's been a tradition for humanity to always pray as he wakes up from bed in the morning, before he leaves for his day-to-day activities, when he has fortunes or misfortunes, when he comes back from his daily activities, and even when he's about to go to bed. Believing, secured, having offered prayers to any of those occasions. What does Kabbalah say about these forms of prayers?
Well, I wouldn't like to say don't waste your time, but what does a man pray for these things for? Because he's afraid of what he might get on the other end. We're a desire to receive pleasure. Let's look at it pragmatically. We're a desire to receive pleasure. So when I'm leaving and going to work, I want to have a good day. So I pray to have a good day. I want to make good money in business, and I hope, I pray so that the family will be well, my work day will go great. And then even if I had even a bit of a up-down kind of day, I come home and I still say thank you and I pray again for the next day. Why? Because I'm also not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. So man's life is in this vicious circle about hope, hoping that things will be good through his prayer and his belief. But the world will not be getting better. If it did, all those prayers that people have been doing for thousands of years would have worked. Right? There are a lot of people who pray on the planet. In fact, billions of them. Does it work? As you can see from the planet's state, it doesn't work. Prayer in spirituality is a whole different ballgame. And we'll get to that soon. All right, don't worry, we'll come to learn those terms. It's very good questions you're asking. But as you can see, we have to start growing up, and we have to start looking at life in a more mature way. Yeah, good questions though. Yes.
Louise from the UK wants to know, so who created the creator?
Who created the creator? That's
a magic question.
That's a good question. Well, look. Let's look at it from the point of what Kabbalists are saying. The whole of reality was created from nothing, so it was created from non-existence. And so we were all created from non-existence, right? From scratch. There never was a desire to receive, and the Creator created the desire to receive. And then the Creator created such a situation that He's concealed. We don't see Him, we don't feel Him. For us, there is no Creator in this world. Who sees Him? Right? Except the Kabbalists. So what are we going to do? How are we going to discover the Creator and then discover that question, well, who created you? First of all, as a person develops in spirituality, just like the Creator created the whole of reality from scratch, the person creates the spiritual reality also from scratch. And what is the spiritual reality? The spiritual reality is actually attaining the attributes of love and bestowal, perfection, and everything, all that ability, just like the Creator upon ourselves. So we are actually building the attributes of the Creator inside of us as we advance in spirituality. Get it? We actually build the Creator ourselves inside of us. But you might be asking, but who's the force that is behind everything that did it in the first place? That's called His essence. And His essence is something we never attain. It's a good question though. The reason we don't attain His essence is we can't really, in our senses, we can't attain the essence of anything. We don't even know the essence of ourselves. If the Kabbalists didn't pop up and say, oh my God, you're all desire to receive and you're all egoistic, we wouldn't even know about it. Like, what do you mean? Just because I want to be happy, what's so bad about it? You know, so if the Kabbalists weren't describing us that situation, we'd never realize what our essence was. So it was like some kind of looking from the outside. So a person can't even know what his own essence is. And so same with the Creator. We don't know His essence. We won't get to know His essence, but we will get to know his attributes. And as we attain his attributes, what's happening then? Well, we're actually building his image in us. So we're actually building the Creator. We should get used to these slowly, because with respect to all the education that we've probably been subject to throughout our childhood, it's really, it's at first very difficult to get our heads around it, because it just sounds it sounds like not possible. It sounds impossible. It sounds crazy, but no, it's not crazy. As you study spirituality, you discover that children also grow up that way. How does a child become a mother or a father? By growing up inside the family, by taking examples from her mum or his dad, he understands how to become a dad or a mum. Why? Because he builds that through the growth process inside him as an image. So he actually makes himself a father from that process of learning. So it's not far-fetched. But the kid never attains the essence of his father, but he attains the attributes of his father. So what I'm talking about is very logical. Like I said, root, branch. Everything that's in the spiritual is down here too. So in order for us to match ourselves to the Creator, just like we study in life, we take examples from life, we learn, we go to school, we discover science and all kinds of things about life. Same we have to do with spirituality. And then we can begin to discover these laws of nature, and then we can clothe those attributes inside us. And then we can begin to behave with those laws of nature, rather than being stuck in our egoistic nature. And that's how you build the Creator. So who made the Creator? The person who attains spirituality. He builds the Creator in him or herself. Very nice question. You bet we didn't have an answer for that, huh?
Now, we're going to have to do some special talks about prayer, because Emmanuel is really interested in prayer.
All right, Emmanuel is Emmanuel and
Nigeria.
Louise and Mike are the only friends. Who we got here with us today?
We have friends from all over the place. We've got Zukiswa from South Africa, Louise from the UK. We've got Mike from South Africa also, Rafal from Poland, Dora from the USA. We've got Dillies from South Africa. We've got...
what about our friends from Europe? We had some friends from... Last time we had friends from Germany, Spain, Portugal.
I've seen Spain. We've got Spain. Actually, I made a list of other friends. Total, we've got Finland, Romania, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Ghana, the USA, South Africa, England, Tanzania, the UK, Spain, and also Poland.
Okay, and are we getting translations of friends who are getting the lesson translated to their local languages?
Oh, and also Kenya. Sorry, Kenya.
You're making those notes as well, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's not miss out any questions from anyone. Now, as you know, we made the lesson 1 hour due to popular request, so we don't have much time left. We will carry on with our lesson next Tuesday. Just in a nutshell, what you need to take from this lesson is that everything that's created in spirituality is reflected towards our lives. And currently we don't understand what our life and the impacts of the things that are in life upon us. We don't understand the causes. We don't know why things are happening. So Kabbalists use this language called the law of root and branch. So from the branches in this world, just like I demonstrated with the father and the mummy example, we can relate to this. We can relate in such a way, we can build such a relationship with the writings that point to the branches in order to discover the roots. And once we discover the roots, then we can understand the cause and consequence of everything that happens in our world. And this is the whole purpose of the Wisdom of Kabbalah. So all these things we're slowly adding on. There are many definitions and terms we'll learn along the way. I haven't touched on some of them today because we will have time. There's nothing to worry about. And once we progress forward, we'll come up with some technical terms. And when we come up with technical terms, I'll tell you exactly what those terms mean and why we shouldn't relate them to the corporeal word, but we should take from that a spiritual meaning. So that's in a nutshell the summary of the lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Okay, you have anything to say, Anthony? We haven't missed out on any questions, have we?
I think we got everything covered.
Except Emmanuel's prayer question.
Yes.
We'll try to nail that next week, Emmanuel, not to worry. There is a thing called prayer in the Wisdom of Kabbalah, but it's not like what people think. It's something else. It has a different way of, let's say, it has a different way of being worked on. All right?
Also, I think I said Poland, but I left out the Netherlands.
Netherlands.
The Netherlands is also with us.
Okay, so
the UK, the Netherlands, and Poland.
If we don't get questions, we don't know if you're there. Okay,
send them to us. Send them to us. Just slam us with those questions. Exactly. We love them.
Also, if you have questions during the week, I really recommend you write them down on your notebook or somewhere so you don't forget. Because when a question pops up, you think, oh, I'll ask that, and then you forget it. So write it down, put it on your mobile, whatever, and then shoot them through in the next lesson. In the interim, guys, have a great week. And we'll see you guys all next Tuesday. All the best now.
Bye-bye.